Well, good afternoon and welcome to a Lunch and Learn. This is brought to you by the Family Resource Initiative. I'm Kathy and I'm part of a really great team. We, across the hall in the Family Resource Initiative, we offer resources and help people navigate life situations. And Lunch and Learn is just one way that we do that. We bring in professionals to speak on a varied topics and hope that you can find that helpful to whatever it is that you might be dealing with. Partnering with the Family Resource Initiative, our speakers today are the husband and wife team, Reverend Dan Schauer and Marsha Schauer. Dan and Marsha will share their wisdom and heart on parenting by unpacking a seminar called Parenting with Love and Logic, and they will bring you some tips on how to create a more relaxed home environment while parenting your loved ones. Dan has a degree in psychology, right? A bachelor's degree and theology, and he now serves as a campus pastor in Inver Grove Heights. What is the church?
Crossroads Church.
Crossroads Church. And Marsha is also degreed and licensed in marriage and family therapy. And they are together an amazing team, and so just get ready to be encouraged because we've had them here before. And the things that they bring to us is just a blessing. So would you welcome Marsha and Reverend Dan?
Thank you, Kathy. Yeah, so Kathy already introduced us, but yeah, Marsha and I have been married, it's close to 29 years in March. So, and we have one son named Nathan, and you may be thinking, since we're teaching a class on parenting with love and logic, that he's like perfect in every way. Well, that would not be true. But he is a pretty good kid, and we're proud of him. So we had what we call, each fall we have a celebration Sunday at our Lakeville campus. And this lady came up to me and said, "Is Nathan your son?" And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "I just got to compliment you because we were having lunch after the service, and she's got 4 little kids.
She was trying to go through the buffet line with 4 little ones, right?
And Nathan just on his own came up and assisted her and helped carry all the plates to the table and everything. I had no idea, and so I was like, oh, maybe we did a couple things right with Nathan. So.
It's a proud parent moment.
Proud parent moment. So, okay, so go ahead.
Oh, all right. So, yes, and we taught this seminar, like I was exposed to the concepts behind parenting with love and logic, which is basically a philosophy by which parents guide their children to grow through their mistakes and learn from the consequences of their choices. And it was developed, I think it was launched in like 1977 by Foster Klein, MD. He's a child psychiatrist out of Colorado, and Jim Fay, who is an educator. And since then, they've been joined by Charles Fay, who is Jim's son, and they do a lot of teaching, and they have a Love and Logic Institute. I think that's part of your handout there. But I was first exposed to the concepts when I used to work at a middle school in St. Paul, and there were some speakers brought in. So, and I found it really helpful. I was about to have Nathan, so that was like 20 years ago, right? And so I paid attention, and I found the concepts really helpful. And so we've taught a class on the parenting with love and logic, probably 15 years ago.
Right.
And yeah, it's been helpful to us. Did we stick to it all the time? No. But I think you'll find that as we go through the concepts that you don't have to do it perfectly, but it's just basically a philosophy, right, of handing the problems back to the kids in a way that encourages them to make the decisions and choices, and to help them be a loving parent, to be there for them with the consequences of their choices.
Yeah. All right, good, Marsha. So our goal today is, as you look on your outline there, we got 9 things we want you to learn about parenting with love and logic. And so the first thing we're going to talk about, and my screen just froze up. So these things
Technical
happen.
difficulties. Okay.
Let me see if I can get it back on. And if the screen doesn't start moving, then, yeah, there it goes. We would be over very quickly. Okay, so the first thing we want you to learn about parenting with love and logic is there's two basic rules that the authors give us. Rule number one is adults set firm limits in loving ways without anger and threats and repeated warnings. And the limits are set using enforceable statements. So you don't say something as a threat that you can't follow up, you can't enforce. And you regard mistakes that the children make as learning opportunities. And you resist the temptation to nag. None of us nag, right? We never nag. No, we joke. The second rule of parenting with love and logic is when children misbehave and cause problems, adults hand these problems back to the child in a loving way. And so you provide empathy before describing consequences, and be genuine in your empathy, not sarcastic. That's the hard part. And use few words and more loving actions. And delay consequences when necessary. And give the kids the gift of owning and solving their own problems rather than you doing it for them.
Yeah, and we thought we would give an example of that Jim Fay gives, actually, of describing a family at a fast food restaurant, and they have a small child with them, and they're in a hurry because they want the child to eat faster because they have to go somewhere, like an older sibling soccer game or something. But the child is taking his time, and with the food, he's playing with his food instead of eating it, right? And so they tell him, hurry up, eat faster. And what happens when you tell a small child to eat faster? Yeah, right. So they will, guaranteed that they will actually slow down even more because you're now in a power struggle. And children always want more power and control over their what they do. Nobody likes to be told what to do and how to do it. So, so the parents are like pleading with the child, lecturing the child, threatening the child, we're never going to take you anywhere else ever again, right? Like, is that enforceable? No, I mean, and the child knows it too, like, even though he's 4. And, or if you don't finish your dinner, we're going to leave you here at the restaurant. Right? I mean, and the child, even the 4-year-old knows that's not going to happen, right? So always give a choice whenever possible. So, and the choices have to be something that you can control. So you can say, what you're going to do is, our car is leaving in 5 minutes. There are 2 ways to go, hungry or not hungry. You decide, right? So now the child is thinking, like you've given them a choice, so you've taken away the power struggle, right? And like, okay, hungry, not hungry, 5 minutes. And then, this is the important part, not another word for the next 5 minutes, right? So once you've said what you're going to do, don't be like, okay, only 3 minutes left, you better start eating your hamburger, right? So like, don't do that. Just have some peace for the next 5 minutes, and then when 5 minutes is left, you say, all right, it's time to go. There are 2 ways to go with us, on your own power or my power, right? And then, like, just give them 10 seconds, and if they don't decide, that means they've chosen to go under your power. So after 10 seconds, you pick up the child, and you start walking out of the restaurant. Now, is the child how likely is it that they will go cooperatively and quietly? Right? So they're going to be screaming, throwing a fit, and making as much noise as possible, right? But ignore the other people in the restaurant, and just be as gentle as possible with the child. Like, don't throw them in the car. What are you looking for?
The clipper, the clicker for the slides.
Oh yeah, where are the? We had it. Where did it go?
I don't see it. Yeah, I was just noticing the slides haven't been going, so I don't know where the clicker is.
Anybody have this clicker?
Clicker, anybody?
Huh.
Is
Oh,
it-
I wonder if I put it in my jacket. Sorry.
Well, that's my jacket.
Yeah. Do you want to look for that?
Yeah, go ahead and keep talking,
Sorry
Marsha.
about
I'll look
that.
for it.
I have a habit of sticking things in my pocket.
Well, we will refrain from comment at this time.
No, okay, I don't know.
All right, we'll just keep going. Can you advance it back there, Mark? Okay, thanks.
All right, thank you.
Just keep up with us. It should be pretty straightforward.
So
Okay.
when you pick up this screaming, kicking 4-year-old and walking through the restaurant, right? And what are the other parents thinking, right? Everybody else in the restaurant is looking at you, but they're thinking, "I'm so glad that's not my kid," right? They're not saying what a bad parent they are or whatever. And besides, you're not at the fast food restaurant to impress other people, so ignore other people. Right. Take him to your car and gently put him into the car seat. So resist the temptation to be like rough with him or to lecture him, right? So like once he's in the car, start driving. Don't say another word, because if you lecture, then it gives them something else to argue with you about or to get more angry about. So you go to the soccer game, right? And then at some point in the evening, he might say something like, "I'm hungry," right? So what you do is you provide empathy. Oh, there it is.
Okay, sorry.
So you provide loving support as a parent. You say, "Yeah, that's tough when you're hungry. I get hungry if I don't eat my dinner," right? "Don't worry, we'll make a big breakfast in the morning." Right? So think about that. You're being a kind parent. You are letting them suffer the consequence of their decision not to eat their dinner, right, before you had to leave. Now, take that versus, "Of course you do. That's why you should eat your dinner when we tell you, instead of goofing around. I hope you learned your lesson." So, right? So if you say that, you've guaranteed that they will refuse to learn their lesson from this incident, right? So don't lecture them. And that's hard as parents.
Oh, it's really hard.
Right, it's really hard to say, "I hope you learned your lesson." But that negates anything that they actually would have learned from that real life experience. Another potential way that parents might deal with this is, "Oh, you're hungry. Okay, let's go to the concession stand. I'll buy you a snack."
At the soccer game.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, what does that do? Right. So you're rescuing them from the natural consequence of the decision that they made not to eat, right? Mm-hmm. So it is really important to kind of stand your ground and not rescue them or lecture them.
Great. All right, thanks, Marsha. The second thing we'd like you to learn is just the foundation of, we call it the love and logic process. So the first step of the foundation is to shared control, that you gain control by giving away the control that you really don't need, and often the control you don't really have to begin with. And then shared thinking, decision-making, provide opportunities for the child to do the greatest amount of thinking, decision-making on their own, because that's how they learn. That's how you prepare your child for the adult world. And then 3, equal shares of consequence with empathy. So absence of anger causes a child to think and learn from his and her mistakes. When you're ranting and raving and yelling at your child, they're not thinking, "I wonder what I could learn from this lesson." They're not. They're reacting to your emotion. So learning is not going on. And then maintain the child's self-concept. Increased self-concept leads to improved behavior and improved achievement. And that's what we want for our children.
All right, I'm going to talk about the 3 styles of parenting, and we've already alluded to some of this. One is a helicopter parent. Who's ever heard of helicopter parents? Right. So what helicopters do is they do search and rescue. They hover around, right? And if somebody needs help, they go down and rescue them. And they're important, but not as much when it's the parent. So this kind of parent, the helicopter parent, hovers, rescues, and protects their child. If a child forgets their lunch, right, you leave work to run it to the school, right? Or if the child doesn't get enough playing time, the parent yells at the coach, right? Ooh, that hits close to home, doesn't it? But you have to think of, what message am I sending to my child? A helicopter parent sends the message like, you're fragile and you can't make it without me. Or, you need me to run interference on your behalf. You need me to protect you, and you can't be expected to be responsible, right? So those are not messages that we want to be sending to our children. And when parents sacrifice their own needs to rescue kids from their mistakes, or you demand that everyone else bends to make your child's life easy, right? You're also communicating that your needs are more important than anyone else's, and that the normal rules of life don't apply to you, right? Or natural consequences don't apply. So, and that's how we raise entitled children, right? So that expect that their needs are more important than anybody else's, or that mom or dad will be around to swoop in and protect them from having to face the consequences of their choices. So it's hard, and like I have helicopter tendencies because I don't want my child to hurt. I don't want. So you have to separate what is their problem versus your problem. And
Well, we talked about this on, it was Sunday night. So my son came home for the weekend. He's at the University of Minnesota, and he came home for the weekend. And Marsha drove him home around, he works at 3 p.m. on Sundays. And I went into his room that evening, like it was 9 o'clock. I noticed his laptop computer was on his bed. So I texted him and I said, "Your laptop computer is on your bed. Do you need it?" And he said, "Oh my gosh, yeah, I need it. Can you run it up?" And part of me was thinking, so what are you going to do about that? Yes, but then I ended up running it up. I mean, so I'm not perfect. But he doesn't have a car up there. He can't come down and get it. So Marsha and I both kind of looked at each other and said, "What should we do?" And so,
right, we should have done more of this when he was younger.
Yeah. So it is hard, is what I'm trying to say. It's hard in situations like that.
Yeah. And then the second type of parent is a drill sergeant parent. Drill sergeants are loud and they demand that you do things my way right now, right? And they do a lot of lecturing and telling you what to do. So they will send messages like, you can't think on your own, right? And I have to do your thinking for you because you're not capable, right? And you're not, so then you're giving the message that they are not capable of making in life, that they need you to be there and tell you what to do. And they're not used to having to think and make choices because they're only deciding, am I going to do what he says, or am I going to not do it but hide it from my parents so they don't find out and get mad, right?
Yeah.
And then the third type of parent is the consultant parent. So what do consultants do, right? Consultants are usually outsiders that come in, look at the situation, and they give some guidance and suggestions of what you could do, right? But it is up to you whether you're going to take their advice or not, right? So this kind of parent is around to give advice, but lets the child make the decisions with the idea that they will let the child make as many mistakes as possible now when the price tag is affordable. One parent will send messages to the child like, you are capable, right? You are capable of thinking through your choices. You are able to make your own decisions. And you are strong enough to face the consequences of your choices, right? And those are the messages that we want to send our child. as when we were, when Nathan was little, like we would go to the store, and this was one technique that I was like, okay, I'm going to do this, right? So he's at the store, and he wants me to buy something for him, right? Every child does. It's like, oh, I want this, I want that. And I was like, yeah, I could see why you would want that. How are you going to pay for it? Right?
Right.
So, and he's like, oh, well, I didn't bring my money. And he always had an allowance from the time he was like 3 or 4.
Right.
So we gave him a few dollars, just so like I don't have to be like, we can always say, did you bring your money, if you want something. And it was like and then how are you going to pay for it? So he'd be like, can you pay for it and I'll pay you back when we get home, right? And a lot of times we would, because I knew he was good for it.
Right.
Right. But sometimes he would be like, well, if you're not going to pay for it, no, I guess I don't want it, right? So like he had to think through. So if he had to pay for it himself, right, is it worth like paying, out of my whatever $5 of allowance to have this? So he had to like think through those things, and really we never had trouble at the store.
Yeah, and he's good with his money, generally. Yeah, he's pretty good with his money. Yeah. The fourth thing we want you to learn about parenting with loving logic is the 4 steps to responsibility. And so the first step is give the child a task they can handle. So don't give an impossible task. So make it age appropriate. For example, don't ask a 5-year-old child that I want the entire house cleaned and vacuumed in 1 hour without a speck of dust. I mean, that's 0 chance that's going to happen, right? But you can say something like, I want you to pick up your toys before dinner. Oh, am I pressing it on my own? Okay, sorry.
No, it's fine.
Yeah, you can. I want you to pick up your toys before we eat dinner. That's a reasonable task that a 5-year-old can do. The second step is hope they blow it. Hope they blow it. Don't hope too hard, but you're kind of hoping. It's a reasonable task, but you're hoping that they blow it. Because make it challenging enough that there's a good chance that they won't be able to do it or they won't do it. And that's an opportunity to teach them a lesson, a profound lesson that could have, that can change their life. Let equal parts of empathy and consequences do the teaching. So you're balancing empathy, showing that you understand, that you care for them, with enforcing the consequences of the decision that they make. So going back to the 5-year-old we mentioned, feel free to join us for dinner when your toys are picked up. All of a sudden, oh, I guess I'm not eating dinner, and especially if it's one of their favorite foods, until I get my toys picked up. So it's a great opportunity to teach. And then give the same task again. So the next time, the next day it's appropriate. Maybe something's going on the next day, but 2 days from that, the room is a mess and it's time for dinner. You do the same thing again to see if they've learned their lesson.
Right. And I mean, I'm not saying like if it's not picked up, they don't get their dinner, but feel free to join us for dinner when your toys are picked up, right? So it is something that they can go and do.
Right.
But yeah. And the good thing about doing this with children is you have lots and lots of opportunities, because chances are they're going to play with their toys again, and chances are they're going to want to eat dinner again. Right. So, I mean, I don't know. Sometimes you might have a very strong-willed child that will say, well, I'm not going to eat my dinner, right? If I don't want to pick up my toys, then I'm not going to eat. And again, then there's the consequence of being hungry.
8
right?
o'clock at night, I'm hungry. And then empathy. Well, that's really hard. I'm sad about that. And then
Right.
So,
and we'll have a big breakfast tomorrow morning.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. Yep. Okay.
All right. And then 5 steps to guiding children to own and solve their problems. So, like we said, empathy. That's the most important part. You cannot do, like, if you don't have empathy, this doesn't work. So how sad, I bet that hurts, or that's really tough, something like that. So if you don't give empathy, if they don't know that you care about them. And it's really hard not to be sarcastic.
It is. It really is.
I bet you're hungry, but really, so empathy is the most important part. And then number 2, send the power message. What do you think you're going to do, right? What do you think you're going to do? So it gives the problem back to them. And offer choices. And we always say, like, when you ask them, like, what are you going to do? And they can solve the problem any way they want, as long as it doesn't create a problem for anybody else, right? And then if they're not sure, they're like, I don't know, right? That's what most kids say, like, what do you think you're going to do? It's like, well, would you like to hear what other kids have tried, right?
Right.
Let me know if you want to hear. And they're like, okay, right? At this point, what you want to do is you want to offer a variety of choices that range from bad to good. Give the bad ones first.
Right.
And then have the child think of the consequences. And how do you think that will work, right? So
After each choice, yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And, you're going to give an example later.
Yeah.
Okay. And then don't make them tell you what they're going to choose. Just say, well, good luck. I hope that works out. After you've given them suggestions, it's up to them to figure out what they're going to choose and how they're going to act. Or they can come up with their own solution as long as it doesn't create problems for anybody else. So, and then good luck. I know you can figure this out. I hope it works out. And number 5, don't worry. So if the child is fortunate enough to make a poor choice, then they have a double learning opportunity.
Right. So, example, let's say you have a 3rd grader, and he wants to play outside with his friends and doesn't want to study for a spelling test the next day. Well, instead of nagging, you allow him to not study, hoping for a teaching moment, hoping for him to fail, right? And then when he comes home later, a few days later, he comes home having done very poorly on the spelling test. And the parent steps in and says, with empathy, gosh, I'm so sad that happened. Without sarcasm again, right? What he said. Because it's really tempting. That's why we keep repeating it. It's very tempting to be sarcastic.
Or say, I told you so, right?
Yeah, I told you so, or, oh, that's just too bad. So, but yeah, just resist that. Just genuine empathy. And then again, like Marsha said, the power message. What do you think you're going to do about that? And then so the child might say something, I don't know, like Marsha said. And then, would you like to hear what other kids have tried? And then you can go, some kids don't study at all and learn to accept bad grades. How do you think that'll work? And hopefully your child will be like, well, I guess I want to get some good grades. I want to pass 3rd grade and go into 4th grade, right, with all my friends. Another suggestion is other kids play first and then study the test later if they have time. How do you think that'll work? Well, it's kind of what I tried and it didn't work. You're hoping for a response for them to process your suggestion. And then a 3rd suggestion could be something like, well, some kids study right after school until they're all done. And then they go and play.
How do you think that'll work?
How do you think that'll work? And the child will be like, well, maybe that could work better for me. So
or maybe not. You might be like, right?
Sometimes your kid will complain. This is an ideal situation. But you're hoping that they're processing in their minds the different scenarios and which will work best for them to solve the problem. See, these are skills they're going to need all the rest of their life. So.
Yeah, and it's really tempting to try to lecture them, I told you so, right? Or, and don't force them, like, so which one are you going to choose? Like, let them do the thinking on their own. I think that's the hardest part, like not saying as much as parents as we want to.
Like me, I would say, well, that last suggestion is pretty good idea I just gave you. You better follow that one. I mean, you just got to let them come up with it on their own. So you're teaching them a valuable lesson. Okay.
All right. The next topic is we're going to talk about the differences between consequences versus punishment. So consequences are there's kind of natural consequences in life, like if you don't study, you probably get a bad grade, right? Or if you don't eat, you might be hungry. And there's kind of logical consequences. That's the logic part. And sometimes you have to kind of think of what would be a logical consequence if they don't do this, if there aren't like built-in natural consequences. So, but consequences paired with empathy from the parents will place the child in the thinking and decision-making mode, right? And the problem becomes their problem, or the facing the consequences, it becomes their problem, not the parents. And it's the problem that'll be the bad guy, not the parent. So the difference with punishment.
Yeah, that's really important because most kids think the parent is the bad person, the bad guy, because they won't let me, right? You won't let me. My friends' parents let me. Let them do that, you know? So, but this process is making the problem the bad guy, not the parent. Right. That's huge.
The punishment paired with like emotion from parents, right, will usually elicit an emotional response from the kid and desire on the part of the kid to become sneaky, to avoid punishment, right, rather than getting them to think about how they can be more responsible. It is really, like Dan was saying, it is human nature want to blame other people when you're miserable, right? If you're unhappy, like everybody, it is human nature. Everybody wants to like blame somebody else for their problems, right? So if you yell and lecture and scream and give out harsh punishments in a harsh way, it just becomes too convenient for them to think about what a jerk you are, right? My parent is, rather than to reflect on what they did and the choices they made. But if you have logical consequences or natural consequences, but the parent is there to support them and love them, but not rescue them, then they're more likely to think about the choices that they made.
Right. Oh, I gotta get the clicker.
Yep.
You want it?
Yep.
All right, cool. So tips and tricks of the trade. That's the seventh thing to teach you guys today. Enforceable statements. We talked about this a little bit, but just to reinforce, these are tips and tricks of the love and logic trade. Always say what you're going to do, not what you think the child should do, right? We are very good at telling our children, this is how you should do it, but that's not how they'll learn the best. So only speak from your perspective because you are the only one you can control. And then make sure you can actually enforce the statement you are making. And then number 2 tip, delay the consequences. So delaying consequences can give you time to think and consider and maybe get input from other people or go online to the Love and Logic website or something and get some advice on how do I handle this situation. So, and then let the child think let them think they've gotten away with it. Then make a plan with the help of others to deal with it. So next time they're hit with the consequences of their decision.
Oh, I was just going to say, so delay the consequence. What is delay the consequences if you're not sure what to do, right? So if the child has done something and there isn't a built-in natural consequence and you're not sure what kind of consequences to give, it's okay to say, oh, this is so sad. I'm going to have to do something about this, but not now.
Yeah.
I'll talk to you later.
Yeah, we should have prefaced that.
Right.
So some of us are quick on the top of our heads. We can come up with brilliant ideas just like that. Others of us need some time to contemplate things. So that's what delaying the consequences is about. You're just delaying things to give you some time to come up with a love and logic response that'll impact your child to make the right decisions. Does that make sense? So, yeah, I'm like that. Sometimes I think of brilliant things I could have said hours later, but on the spot, I'm kind of like, I just don't know how to respond, right? We've all been there with our kids. So,
right.
Yeah.
So a good thing you can say, is like, again, give empathy, but say, okay, we're going to have to do something about this, but I'll talk to you about it later, and then try not to worry about it.
Yeah.
Right?
Try not to worry about it because you're trying to get them to at least start thinking about, what's mom or what's dad going to do, right? The third one is the third tip of the trade, give choices. So give as many choices as you can while the price tag is small so you can control when the stakes are higher. So when given choices, begin with phrases like, what would be best for you? Would you rather? Feel free to. You can either, finish the sentence as appropriate to your context. So only give choices about which you will be happy and satisfied with. So don't offer your child a choice that you're not going to be able to live with, right? That's not going to work. So kids need to believe, whether it's true or not, that life will go on and you'll be happy no matter which choice they make. It's that manipulation thing. I can make my mom miserable if I choose to do this. And so, you don't want it's not aloofness. Don't want to get, but it's close. It's something near approaching that. You're your life goes on no matter what choice your kid makes. It's important to communicate that. You care, you're empathetic, but what their choice doesn't destroy your day. That's what you're trying to communicate.
Right, unless it's a life and death. You don't say, feel free to play out in the street.
Right.
Like there are times where you have to be like, no, you have to. Yeah. I mean, you don't give them choice when it's life or health or danger. But most things in life aren't like that, So let's say, okay. And then once you've given a consequence, don't give them more choices or when they argue with you. So let me have an example. I wanted to do a teenage example. So let's say your teen wants to get a ride to the mall, right? They're going to meet up with their friends at the mall at 4 o'clock, whatever, right? And then, but you need some yard work done, right? Things done around the house. So you can say, I would be happy to drive you to the mall after you rake the leaves, right? That sounds reasonable. And it's, like noon, so they have plenty of time to do it. But they put it off, right? They're doing whatever. And, yep, right? So should you nag them all day? Should you say, hey, it's 3 o'clock, you only have an hour, you better get out there and start, raking? No, you don't remind them, because reminding them kind of tells them that they're not capable of remembering things on their own. So when they come at, 3:55 and says, can you drive me now? Say, repeat, I would be happy to drive you after you rake the leaves. But my friends are there already. I will do it afterwards, right? I mean, that's what every kid says. I would be happy to drive you after you finish raking the leaves, right? So you're the worst mother in the whole world. My friends have parents who will give them rides because they love them. Right? So just repeat, I would be happy to drive you after you finish raking the leaves, right? My friends are going to be mad at me because I let them down and I won't have any friends anymore, right? Ouch, right? And so you can say, repeat, or you can go into empathy mode. Oh, that's really sad. What do you think you're going to do? If they say, I'm not going to have any friends anymore, right? So, and don't give in, because if you do, it shows the child that they can manipulate you and that they don't really have to live with the consequences of their choices. So, will it cause irreparable harm if they don't get to meet their friends at the mall on this one day? Or if they show up, an hour late and have to try to find them? Will it cause it, it's really not, it might feel like a life and death thing to the child, right? Because, anybody who's had a teen knows that. Friends are the most important thing. But it's a really good learning opportunity. Or, for that matter, will it cause irreparable harm if the child goes hungry one night, Yep. But they're a lot more likely to think about it the next time you ask them to do something, right? If they've had to live with the consequences of their choices. I'm doing this part too? Okay.
You are.
All right. So there, The Love and Logic, Jim Fay, gives a lot of kind of one-liners that you can use when you don't need to do an explanation. Sometimes an explanation is not necessary. And again, it's always best if parents use as few words as possible and as little emotion as possible. Like, use all the emotion you want when they've done something well and celebrate with them, that's great. But if they mess up, use as little emotion as possible. And think about using some of these one-liners when they argue with you, right? So don't be afraid to be a broken record. Just pick one or two. So some of the one-liners are like, nice try, right? When they try to get you to negotiate with them, nice try. But again, like, say it in a loving way. Or if they argue with you and they're trying to get you to see it from their point of view, it's like, probably so, that's probably true, right? Or, I love you too much to argue. That's a good one. Mm-hmm. Or, like, well, that could be, right? Like, my friends are gonna hate me. Well, that could be, right? So, or it probably seems that way to you, right? So these are some one-liner. Or if they say, you don't love me, it's like, oh, or you think I'm stupid, or whatever. It's like, aren't you glad I don't believe that? Or hope you get over that feeling. I love you, right? Yeah. And these I don't think are on the PowerPoint, but another good one-liner is, what were the choices? Or just repeat the choices you gave them, right? Right. So what were the choices if they have a hard time? Or this is a really good one, say no problem. Especially if they've done something and it's not under your control and you don't know what to do. Right. Say no problem, which means no problem for the parent, but probably a problem for the child. And again, as they get older and older, it is harder to it's harder to pick up a 12-year-old and carry them out than it is a 4-year-old, right?
True.
You're hoping that they learn when they're younger. But, I mean, the Love and Logic works with teens also. Yes.
Good.
Yeah.
All right, now our last one is just some concluding advice. And these won't necessarily be logically connected. They're just some advice the authors give to help us in situations we run into. So, the question we want our children to ask themselves is, how is this next decision I make going to affect me? That's, like I said before, that's an incredibly valuable skill to teach your child. Kids who have parents who make all the decisions for them don't learn how to make their own decisions. Then, when they need to make a decision, they are paralyzed. They don't know what to do. And they make it not based on what's right, but on who's going to find out, and how's that person going to react, and how can they hide it from that person, which is, of course, not the skills we want to teach our children. Parents have a choice in how to deal with any situation. They can rant, rave, give in, and take away the child's problem, or they can allow the consequences to sink in, which will in turn create a lifelong lesson for our child. Kids need to feel that they have an investment in something in order to take it seriously. So that's just the truth. Kids need to understand that trust is about making and keeping your word, right? So the more you keep your word, the more trust is built. So that they need to learn that from us. When mom and dad say that this is the consequence, they always keep their word. And so that'll get passed down to your child. Remember to pick your battles wisely. Not many things are worth fighting for. But if you do choose to fight, you better win. Because you better win. So that's the important advice there. Never argue with your kids. You don't win. Don't nag, or remind. Tell them once. They are smart enough to remember if it's important to them. Talk about things your child likes to do and explain exactly what you need to see from them in order to do the things they like. Like, example Marsha just said about going to the mall.
Or their phone.
Yeah, or their phones. Yeah, phones are a great one. So, allow a child to have power to gain access to the things that are important to them. They will choose the most important things to them. Don't choose for them. And again, like Marsha mentioned, the phone, that's often the most important thing to a teenager's life these days. Preserve the relationship with your child at all cost. Make the behavior the problem, not the child or you. And when you need to talk to a child about their behavior, do it in a peaceful time, not when your emotions are all charging and raging, right? Because then you go into lecture mode and ranting and raving. We want to avoid that. And when using the 5 steps that we learned earlier, empathy, power statement, offering choices, child stating consequences, and don't worry. When using that, do your part, say your part, and walk away. You know, don't hang around waiting for a response and waiting for an argument to ensue. We want to avoid that. So go back to what you were doing. Maybe you were doing some stuff in the kitchen or working on something in the office. Just go back to what you were doing and show that your life goes on, whatever decision they make in their life. And then smile. You choose whether you are going to be happy or sad. So it's like, oh, I guess Dad's not upset about this. That's interesting. It causes them to start pondering their life and their decisions. So
Consequences said with a smile are much easier
yes.
to swallow. Smile from a loving parent, right?
Yes. Not a sarcastic smile.
Right, and that's the hard part. Okay, in conclusion, so we talked about some of the concepts of love and logic, and that's the easy part. The challenge is changing from your old way of dealing with kids, because we all have habits, we've all had, and so it's really, that's the hard part. To
I was
start.
just going to say, we didn't get into this tonight. Today we don't have time, but we often parent the way our parents parented us, right? And they probably didn't use love and logic. So it's hard to change a parenting pattern.
Yep. So if you don't learn the whole process or like get the whole thing down, that's okay. Start with small steps and build from there. And so, you know, you can look up love and logic online. There's a lot of online resources. There's books. There's parenting with love and logic. There's early childhood love and logic, parenting teens with love and logic.
I bet there's YouTube videos.
I bet there are YouTube videos. So,
All right. So open up for Q&A if anybody has any questions. Yeah, Angelica.
Here, let me get you a mic because they're recording this, so they want it. Go ahead.
What do you guys suggest if you have 2 separate homes and there's 2 separate parents and you both have different parenting styles? So like, for example, my kids have the drill sergeant dad. How can I like help encourage them in a way that, you know, that doesn't affect their confidence or how they feel about themselves, and, you know, being that they're getting 2 different parenting styles so intensely? What do I do?
Right. So that is a really good question, and that happens a lot where they are in 2 different households and with different parenting styles. Now, one, you cannot control anybody else, right? So you cannot make you could give them books or tips or whatever, but you cannot, ultimately you can't control what somebody else does in their own home. You can control what you do, right, in your own house. And so you can give a consequence when they're at your house. So like, you know, that's all you can do. And you can encourage them, you can be loving, you can talk to them with empathy. But yeah, you can't, a lot of times you can't even get the other parent to carry out the consequence you've given. So if they get their phone back when they go to their dad's, I mean, you can't control that, but you can control what happens at your house.
Any other questions? Okay. Thank you so much for coming today and bringing all this encouraging tips and things. I wish I would have had you when my kids were little. Next week, on the 16th, we have Todd Mulliken here again to talk about how to have difficult conversations with loved ones. If you would do us a favor, in your baskets, there are some cards to fill out. Please help us to improve if we need to, and be honest, and let us know what you think for today. And yeah, I guess we're good. Thanks for coming today. Come on back next week. We'll see you soon.